This week, we catch up with Isobelle Carmody, an Australian fantasy and science fiction author who's been creating worlds for nearly 3 decades. Mike goes through his Videogame Shoebox and dusts off a copy of Capcom's 1989 beat-em-up, Final Fight, and Jonny Robot emerges bleary-eyed to tell us all about what makes Dark Souls 3 so very, very good. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week saw the announcement of not one, but 2 massive first-person shooters with new games on the way from both Call of Duty and Battlefield. First up, Activision takes their shooter into space with Call of Duty Infinite Warfare confirmed for release on November 4th. It's already causing controversy. Just a week after announcement, the reveal trailer had already garnered more than 14 million views and 1 million dislikes, gaining it a spot on YouTube's 5 most disliked videos, where it sits among titles like Justin Bieber's Baby, Rebecca Black's Friday, Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball, and Rick Perry's Strong campaign video from 2012. That said, something that is getting fans a little bit excited for this one is the treat that Activision and Infinity Ward have tucked away inside the Legacy Edition of Infinite Warfare, a remastered version of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. At this stage, there is no standalone release in the works, but who knows how that'll play out come Christmas time. And while one studio looks towards the future, another looks further into the past, as EA and DICE announced Battlefield 1, the next in their shooter franchise, set amid the trenches of the First World War. We were all expecting this one to be Battlefield 5, so it is a nice change. It's been a while since we visited the Great War, and it looks like we won't be waiting too long to go back. Battlefield 1 will hit shelves from October 21 on all major platforms. Moving right along, and Respawn Entertainment, the developer behind Titanfall, has announced that it is working on a new Star Wars title. This isn't a rumour or a fan's wishful thinking, this is something officially confirmed via the studio's blog. However, while Respawn has told us that it will be a third-person action-adventure game, they haven't told us anything else. Sit tight, space fans, this one could be big. Something else that could also be big, but is much less confirmed at this stage, Rockstar Games' parent company Take-Two has reportedly trademarked something called Judas. A domain has also been registered for Judas the Game, by an agency that Rockstar has used in the past. This is the first we've heard of the game, but we are a little bit intrigued. Judas, of course, is a character from the Bible who betrayed Jesus for 30 silver pieces. In the 2,000 or so years since, the term has been used for false friends or backstabbers, a theme that sounds well suited to a video game. Evolve developer Turtle Rock is also working on something new, which we also don't know anything about. Besides the fact that this cutting-edge new IP is targeting next-generation hardware, so no surprises. Scott Cawthon, the man behind the juggernaut that is Five Nights at Freddy's, has even less to talk about regarding his potential new project. He's reportedly talking with a few companies who are interested in perhaps doing console remakes of his original horror games. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, of course, includes 4 original games, a spin-off RPG, Five Nights at Freddy's World, a novel, toys, an upcoming movie, and hints that there are more games in the works. And speaking of consoles, world builder Terraria is finally making its way to the Wii U, arriving on Nintendo's console in late June. Expect plenty of multiplayer, there's 4 people locally and up to 8 players online, as well as support for the Wii U gamepad. But in PC news, Nvidia has announced 2 brand new cards, the GeForce GTX 1070 and GTX 1080, both of which are faster and more energy efficient than the GTX 980 Ti and the GTX Titan X. The super shiny GTX 1080 is due out later this month, while the slightly cheaper GTX 1070 is set to arrive in June. Now, if you're a fan of Japanese cult creator Suda51, you will be delighted to know that his company Grasshopper Manufacture has a new game coming out before the end of the year, but it's actually a very old game. The Silver Case, part of the Kill the Past series, was first published in Japan in 1999 and has never seen a Western release until now. These days, Suda51 and the studio are best known for their surrealist, voyeuristic, violent takes on the world, but the Silver Case is somewhat more subtle. You play as a journalist in a visual novel detective case set to catch the killer. And rather than just a localized port, this is a proper translated remake. 2 decades later, an opportunity for English-speaking gamers to catch up with the game that many Japanese fans consider a must-play. There's been some big news from the world of League of Legends as well. Riot Games has officially banned 3 North American teams from sanctioned play following some serious allegations over players' pay and contracts. 2 of the teams, Impulse and Renegades, have been competing in the Championship Series, while the third, Team Dragon Knights, is part of the Challenger Series. All 3 have been smacked hard with the ban hammer. Team Impulse has reportedly failed to pay their players on time on numerous occasions, while also failing to provide valid contracts. Renegades apparently broke team ownership rules and caused player welfare concerns in a case that also affects Team Dragon Knights. In happier news though, you can now have your League of Legends and eat it too, as a League of Legends restaurant opens in Beijing's Hong Tai district. As well as serving pizzas, with specials changing each day of the week, including the mushroom-covered wealth of Timo, the eatery also serves elixirs and a selection of game-themed bites, like fries labelled the Passion of Gangplank, a squid dish named the Tentacle of Vel'Koz, and, of course, Brand's delicious custard tart. For more information on any of these stories, or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen from Player Attack. We are here at Oz Comic Con Adelaide 2016. I'm with Isobelle Carmody, who I've just ridiculously embarrassed by admitting that the last time I saw her would have been maybe 25 years ago when I was...
a child. You were a child.
Well, you did. And it was, I think it was a Writers' Week event, and when I was in primary school, you were the most amazing author ever, and everyone read Obernewtyn, and everyone who liked fantasy read your stuff, and I'm finding out now that people still love it, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's the beauty of being an author that you're introducing yourself to children is that when they grow up, they give the books to their children, and so there's a longevity, which is actually really special.
And so tell me, of the people who have been coming up to you here at Comic-Con, are there people who are sort of my age who did fall in love with you a little while ago? Or are there new people, or are there older people as well who come up?
Yeah, older people, because when I first started to write, there were people who were, like, I was only 20, and so there were librarians reading me who were older. So very elderly people sometimes come up. And then you have really young people come up because the books have been passed on to them. What I sometimes forget now that they're introduced to me through the Little Fur books or Land of the Lost books, which I'm always accustomed to people like you coming to them through the Obernewtyn books. But now there's a whole generation that grew up with the younger books that are discovering the Obernewtyn books, and that's nice too. It's like they're coming to you from all different angles.
And so we've just quickly touched on, how many books have you written?
About 37. I haven't counted them, but yeah, about 37.
So you are what they call a prolific author.
I am. I'm both accused of being prolific and accused of being really, really slow.
How can you do both?
I know. Well, there's 12 years between one and another of the Obernewtyn Chronicles, so there is some justice in that. But in that time, I brought out a lot of books. So that's the prolific bit, but that's the delayed bit.
Yeah. So, obviously, people know you for the fantasy stuff from... Is that still what you're doing for people who might not have realised that you have still been writing for the past little while? What are you working on these days?
Well, I did a graphic novel a while ago, and that was something new for me. I'm interested in a kind of a connection between visuals and words, and graphic novels were always interesting to me. I read comics like everybody when I was a kid and absolutely loved them. But as a writer, I want that density of text as well. So I've tried a few times to put text together. I did a picture book called Dreamwalker, which had a connection between text and words, and that was really interesting because what I was trying to do there was talk about a boy who drew his own comic. And so I was playing around with the idea of a person, if you invent a world and then you enter into that world, what do you do? If you invent a horrible, terrifying world, that's fine until you have to live in it yourself. And what happens when you befriend the characters, then you're out of the world and you have to solve the problems actually for your friends now. So I was playing around with what it's like to enter into your world and fictional characters and all the rest of it. So that really was a great medium, and I loved the process. So then I went on to an actual graphic novel, which is still a hybrid with text in it, but with words in it and pictures that are equally important. Yeah.
And so is that this one here that we're talking about?
That's Evermore, and Evermore is that came to me because a young guy sent a manuscript to me, and I don't know why this happens, but people send manuscripts to writers. They think we're going to say to our publisher, yes, why don't you go ahead and publish this? I've sent people to publishers, they never ever listen to me. So I would do it if it were possible, but it just doesn't happen. So they send manuscripts, I have my own slush pile, and I say it could take 2 years, and I mean it. So Dan sent me his own book, Dan Reed, his own book, and it was 2 years. I said it's going to take it possibly, and almost 2 years to the day. I read the manuscript. It was brilliant. I contacted him straight away and I said, look, I really hope you haven't been waiting for my say-so. And he said, no, I actually did send it to a small publisher in America. It came out, I think it did have kind of a troubled life for a while. They ran out of money or something. I don't really remember all the details. So at the end, I said, well, I can't help you. You're already there. Let's meet and celebrate. So we had a cup of coffee in Melbourne, and at the end of an hour's conversation, we'd agreed that he was going to take Evermore, which was then a 40,000 word graphic novel, and turn it into a 40,000 word story and turn it into a graphic novel. So for the next 2 years it went back and forwards. And it was just such a lovely process of winnowing down the words and gradually getting it into the right shape. And sometimes he would produce a great picture and I'd say, oh, I'm going to get rid of all the text and let the picture. Sometimes he would send great picture and I would say, I love the picture, but I really want to have text there. So, yeah, I do that as well.
Have you had some very well-loved copies of Obernewtyn come over your desk to get autographed?
And people say to you, how much does it cost to get this autographed? I say, nothing. I mean, some of them bring in gigantic piles of all the books, and they've lugged them here on buses and trains. And so it's really nice to say, no, you don't have to, or can I have 2 done? And they've brought the whole lot in, obviously hoping. And I say, I'll do them all, it's no problem. So, yeah, that's nice. It's nice to be available for that.
I'll do them all except that one. Always hated that one.
I could never do it.
Hell yeah! Final Fight is brilliant. It was brilliant back when it came out in arcades all the way back in 1989, and it remains brilliant to this day. Welcome to the Videogame Shoebox. The game was originally developed as a sequel to 1987's Street Fighter. However, due to the roaring success of Double Dragon, Capcom opted to change the name and shift development to something that more closely emulated that. This resulted in the Final Fight we know and love today, and also going back to the drawing board for Street Fighter 2, which, if you've been keeping up with previous video game shoeboxes, turns out was a very good thing. The Final Fight series are side-scrolling beat-em-ups in the same style of other world-received games from the era, such as the aforementioned Double Dragon, and of course the Mega Drive Genesis Streets of Rage and Golden Axe. You walk to the ride and proceed to punch the living snot out of any and everyone that happens to walk into the scene. Luckily, only bad guys show up, otherwise I can only imagine the litigation that would arise from a couple of guys going on a fighting spree throughout the city. I've seen Civil War, that stuff doesn't end well. You have 3 characters to choose from: Haggar, Cody, and Guy. Cody, being my boy here on screen, is a fast, scrappy fighter with fast punches, knees to the face, and a cool tornado spin kick. Mike Haggar, a big bruiser of a former professional wrestler with hard punches, a solid dropkick, a killer spilling lariat, and finally an insane spinning pile driver. Guy, however, is a ninja. This is just plain cool. But the SNES home version, which I had, didn't have the space on the cartridge for all 3 characters, so it was Guy that unfortunately got the chop. They eventually released Final Fight Guy, which replaced Cody with Guy. This is actually not the only difference between the SNES version and the original arcade release. They also removed the ability to play 2-player. It was just too much for the console to show more than a few characters on screen at any one time. There are even more differences when looking at different regions' copies, but we'll get to those in a bit. Jessica has been kidnapped. It's up to her daddy, Haggar, her boyfriend, Cody, and his friend, Guy, to save her and of course the city from the criminal scum. Guy doesn't have a personal connection with Jessica, but he's a good-hearted soul who just wants to use his lethal weapon-registered body without fear of repercussion. Which is good because Mike Haggar also happens to be the newly elected mayor of this fair city. The mayor is personally going around mopping up crime like some sort of shirtless, mustachioed Batman. If only every city were lucky enough to have Haggar as mayor. The game controls simply enough. Move your chosen fighter up, down, left and right with an attack button and a jump button. Jumping and attacking lets off a diving attack. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but is a cool way to introduce yourself to a room full of bad dudes. Pressing jump and attack at the same time, however, lets off a really cool spinning attack that knocks everyone back that is in close proximity. Really handy when you're surrounded and being pummeled, but be careful. Using this desperation maneuver drains a little bit of your health, regardless of if you hit anyone or not, so don't just whip it out willy-nilly. You can also pick up weapons dropped by enemies such as knives, steel poles, and also swords. I don't see Haggar being able to brush all this under the rug, but hey, if they hit you, hit them back. If they slice you with a massive katana, slice them back! There are a total of 6 stages, each with their own boss. All of the environments offer purely aesthetic differences, although as you progress, your enemies become tougher and tougher as hard mid-bosses start becoming the general fodder the game throws at you. Each with their ridiculous multiple health bars and crazy stupid damage dealing capabilities. If you happen to play the original arcade version before picking up the English localized SNES port, you may have noticed some differences. The first 2 bosses, Damned and Sodom, were renamed Thrasher and Katana respectively. Poison and Roxy, 2 of the first transsexual characters in video games that I can think of, were changed to male enemies Billy and Sid. All references to alcohol were removed from the game, which resulted in 2 health pickups being completely replaced. There is no blood when a bladed weapon is used, darker skinned enemies were given lighter skin tones, and finally the dude that comes out after you bashed his car to pieces with your bare hands in a bonus stage has had his voice changed to say, "Oh my car," instead of "Oh my god." Phew! Nintendo in English-speaking territories has never had a particularly good reputation when modifying games for local release. Whilst I'm sure we could have handled an unaltered version of the game, I still believe that Final Fight was, and still is, a great game. It had its flaws, which were mostly not the game's fault, but it's aged so well. I definitely recommend digging yourself up a copy. It's currently available on iOS and the PS3 and Xbox 360 stores. That's it for now. Tune in for next time for another trip down memory lane as I dust off some more cartridges. Be sure to let me know on Twitter any games that you might like to see on here next time. What's in your video game shoebox?
In a world deep in the darkest ages, hellish fiends ruled over this land. But one man will rise up and raise a whole lot of hell.
I'm not gonna lie, I have an unwavering love for FromSoft's Dark Souls series. A love on par with that of Jack and Diane or Jonny and Chachi. There's just something about them, something primeval and pure, something violent, brutal and horrific, but at the same time ultimately beautiful and awe-inspiring. It's a series that requires you to commit yourself to a journey built to test your mettle and skill again and again and again.
The night's so black that the darkness hums.
But much like Disneyland, by the 3rd trip, what is there really left to do or see? What horrors are there left to face? By now we've surely been battle-hardened and wise to all the game's tricks, right? Or is that just what Dark Souls 3 wants us to think? At its core, Dark Souls 3 really hasn't changed. It's still a 3rd-person action RPG with a wonderfully subtle narrative and an unadulterated combat system that demands you constantly have caffeine running through your veins. The changes it has made, though, are subtle and innocuous, less of what you'd call new features and more like callbacks to other installments. In this way, Dark Souls 3 is a chimera of sorts, boasting all the best features from previous Dark Souls iterations, Bloodborne, and even the granddaddy to them all, Demon Souls. These mechanics are so seamlessly blended together that it creates something instantly familiar but also frighteningly new. Like exciting frightening. You know what I mean? Right? No? Okay.
Talking true legends, those who would link the fire.
You'll face death. Enough death to leave you broken.
Much like the other Souls games, half of this aforementioned freaky excitement comes from just exploring the world. Lothric is a mean place, filled with hollows, demons, dragons, asshole players, and the spectre of self-doubt that haunts you every waking hour. But regardless of this, the game dares you to scour every area of it for its trinkets and secrets, and you know what? You end up really wanting to. These areas are easily some of the most beautifully haunting and striking landscapes From Software have ever created, even if they do feel like places we've oft-trodden before. I can't hide the fact I'm a little disappointed by the lack of cohesion and interconnectivity in the world overall. Instead of the majesty of the first Dark Souls world design, From Software have embraced the disconnected levels and warping hub world of Demon Souls. That said, the level design is still crazy on point, with each area built to specifically mess you up.
In a story of brutal retribution and redemption, a man must fight his way in an epic journey across this land to hold on to his mortality. For that, he'll need souls. Many, many souls.
The new stuff though, that's the really interesting part. New covenants, new enemies, new mechanics, all of it mostly hidden, as is the Dark Souls way. One of the most striking of these changes is found in what Dark Souls is fabled for, its boss fights. Dark Souls 3 is far more liberal with experimenting when it comes to the structure of these set-piece encounters. Most fights are now multi-staged, with big nasties gaining more movesets, tactics, and sometimes even a new health bar, just as you start to get the upper hand. Throw in the fact that some of these fights play out more like mini puzzles instead of just testing how hard you can hit something, and you've got yourself a real challenge. These factors, combined with the overall awe-inspiring design of each grotesque titan, makes Dark Souls 3's boss fights some of the most memorable in the franchise history. Whilst we're on topic of new, let's talk weapon arts. Each piece of equipment now has an art, or as I explained the first time I saw it in a PvP bout, fancy bullshit. These alternate attacks take a hit from your MP bar and allow you to do crazy unpredictable things, like suddenly turning a slow, clumsy greatsword into an elegant and lightning-fast spinning arbiter of death. This addition to the combat makes PvP really genuinely inspiring, and PvE more fun to play than ever. Like one dude that invaded my game rocking twin great shields, it looked hilarious until he trapped me in the corner and started to bludgeon me to death. Almost all weapons are now viable, which makes experimenting on multiple playthroughs all the more alluring.
To be unkindled is to be a vessel for souls. Sovereignless souls will become thy strength.
If this is the swan song for From Software's flagship series, then it doesn't end with a pitiful ember, but a raging fire. Elegant yet deadly, Dark Souls 3 is everything you want from a game of its lineage. Beautiful visuals, an impressive and deep world narrative, hideous enemies, a refined but still pure combat system, a thriving and enthusiastic online community, and fan service galore. Although hard and demanding, Dark Souls 3 is ultimately one of the most rewarding gaming experiences out there right now. Dare I say it? It easily competes with the original for the finest of the series.
Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. The only way forward is to fight back. Again, and again, and again, and again. When you pick a fight with the devil, you'd better be stronger than hell. Dark Souls 3. Available on VHS on April 12th.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, with less than a month to go before Oz Comic Con hits Melbourne, we revisit the cosplay guests who visited Adelaide, and we take a look at some of the smaller games that we've been playing around the place. Not everything's about the big name. In the meantime, you can catch us at playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.